Hi everyone! So today we are going to be making some sourdough. I have actually only had one successful sourdough so far, so I'm hoping I did it right. I think where I've gone wrong in the past is I keep my sourdough starter in the fridge, and when you do that you have to pull it out and feed it and let it sit and then feed it again at night and then do your mixing. Whereas if you keep it on the counter, you can pretty much use it straight away. But if you keep it on the counter, you have to feed it every 12 hours, so morning and night. And that's just, I don't make enough sourdough or bread to really do that for. So we're going to, what I've done is I've taken this sourdough and I took it out of the fridge and I fed it, and then I have been feeding it for the past day and a half. So 4 feeds in all, including today's feed. And now it looks really healthy. You can see that it's nice and healthy by all the bubbles that have formed in the glass. It's actually really good if you have some kind of glass container to do your sourdough in. This way you can see those bubbles and see how healthy it is. The first time I made it, it took forever to rise, and it looked, there was only like a few bubbles here and there, but now it's super bubbly all the way around, and it looks absolutely gorgeous. So, take that off and turn on my scale. Okay, so I have it on grams, and I'm gonna just zero this out without the spatula. Okay, so it's zeroed out. So all I want to do is you can add anywhere from 50 to 100 grams of sourdough starter. I'm gonna add about 80. That's about what I like. 100's a little too sour for me, and 50's not quite the flavor we want, so 80 is about. Now, well, I've only had one successful sourdough full like bread that actually rose and looked nice and puffy and looked really nice. I have had sourdough pucks, and they're not bad. They don't rise. So it's more like eating kind of like a crusty flatbread. So I'm just doing about 80. I got 84 in there, that's fine. It doesn't have to be exact. And then all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna set this aside. I'm gonna put this back on my glass jar because sourdough starter smells. If you don't have sourdough starter, it smells. I actually got mine from a friend of ours in North Carolina. He had some and he sent it up with us, and so I've been trying for the past several months to make some sourdough without success really, other than one time. And the only difference is I actually took the time to feed the sourdough to health versus taking it out, feeding it in the morning, and then trying to just work it from there. So I'm going to zero out my scale again, and then it's 350 grams of water. I got lucky. If you ever add too much by doing it this way and using a scale, just take a tablespoon and do it, dip it out. It keeps bouncing back and forth between 349 and 350, so I'm just gonna add just a pinch more. Okay, and then what you wanna do is you wanna actually stir it so that the sourdough breaks apart and actually becomes more like just foggy water. And you don't want really any big chunks of sourdough. You just want it kind of, the sourdough completely mixed in with the water. I'll see if I can, you guys can kind of see it there, but I'll see I can kind of show you there. There's no big chunks in there. Okay. That generally, I don't know why, but it does generally change the weight. As long as you measured it correctly before you mix it all together, then you're fine. Don't worry about the weight being changed. Just zero it back out. Okay, then you're going to do 500 grams of bread flour. You need a really good flour to do this with. Rye flour, any other type of flour works, but I've heard you shouldn't try that first. So I'm just sticking with bread flour for now. No specific brand, just bread flour in general. And it's 500 grams, so I don't have a lot in here. So I'm just going to go ahead and dump all this in here because I know it's not 500 grams. And then the new. Okay, so I managed to get it. It's like 5:02. That's fine. You don't, well, you want to be within the realm. You don't have to be perfectly exact. I have a scale, and I know a lot of people don't, so you'll be doing it by cups. And when you do it by cups, you pretty much, you might be under or over depending on how you level out your cups and also what size your cups actually are. So then I'm going to add salt. I use pink salt or Himalayan salt for everything. So you just want, it's 1 teaspoon or 4 grams. And then all you're going to do is you're going to mix it together. And that's it. Mix it together. Well, not it, but it as far as the scale goes. So you can actually move the scale. And you can do this with your hands. You don't have to do it with a spoon, or you can do it with the bottom end of an actual like wooden spoon. That works really well. I use that for my French bread and my ciabatta bread. Now the dough's not going to look like it's come together very well. Don't worry about it. As long as you've got most of the flour mixed in and there's only like a little bit left, then you don't have to worry about any extra not being mixed in. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull this right on off. It's going to be really sticky. I know some people do it with their hands, mix that part by their hands. You're more than welcome to. Be a fun activity for a kid if they like getting their hands dirty. My son doesn't like getting his hands dirty though, so. How many times have y'all tried to make sourdough? Or how long did it take you to actually get a successful batch of sourdough before you started succeeding regularly? So yummy. And that's it. You now will let this sit for, let me show you guys what it looks like so you can see. See, it's not come together at all. Really, it's still very clumpy. It's not very smooth. Don't worry about that. That's what we want it to look like. Now we're going to cover this and leave it for 1 hour. I just use a kitchen towel here. And I'm just going to let that sit now for 1 hour on the counter. And then I'll do that. Okay, everyone, so it's been about an hour with our sourdough here. looks like this now. All you're gonna do is you're gonna take, I suggest getting a bowl of water, be easier. Get your hands nice and wet. Now we're just going to go from the corner, or the corner, the edge, and pull up and fold over. I like to rotate my bowl while I'm doing this. And just keep your hands nice and wet while you're doing it. I normally get about 3 turns in before I have to re-wet my hands. And then just try to scrape it all up off the bottom of the bowl. This way you get all of the dough. And then you're just gonna keep doing this. It's gonna take a minute. What you're filling for is it to kind of stiffen back up. It's gonna have kind of a stretch to it right now. And you're also wanting to now actually look more like a piece of dough, like regular dough. If you've ever made bread before, if you haven't, I personally would suggest starting with that and not trying to make sourdough as your very first bread. Like, go and try to make a French bread or something like that. I'll try to share some of my favorite recipes that I use from other people. This way you guys have at least a starting point, and I know those recipes work, so I highly recommend the ones that I suggest, because I've tried several bread recipes and they don't always turn out. Especially like no knead ones, like ones that, if there's a bread recipe that calls for not kneading and it's not a dessert bread, I don't trust it anymore. What I've learned is that bread needs to be kneaded, and if it's not, then it kind of turns more like a pound cake almost. It's just not very, it's very sweet and very dense. It's not good. I actually like to take it at the end when I'm done, and I like to turn it over. I also like to try to get all the little bits off of the bottom of the bowl, and I just like to kind of try to shape it into a ball, turn it over so it's nice and smooth, like so. And now we're gonna let it sit for 30 minutes. And as you can see, my hands are very doughy, sticky dough. So you're gonna cover it with your towel again. I gotta go wash my hands before I do that, but you're gonna cover it with your towel, and then you're gonna let it sit for about 30 minutes, and then we're going to stretch and fold again. Okay, so I will see you in another 30 minutes. So we're gonna just stretch and fold this again. So you're literally taking from the edge, stretching up, folding over. Make sure your hands are good and wet again. And this time you don't have to do it as much. Your sourdough should have looked a lot smoother. I forgot to show you guys that. What you're looking for is, like, it's gonna be real stretchy. See how stretchy that is? It's gonna start kind of stiffening back up. And once it does that, that means you've worked the gluten real well, and that it needs to rest again. So we're gonna let it rest after this. Now what I like to do is, after the 30 minutes, I like just to do 2 more 15-minute ones. So I'm gonna do this twice, and then we're just gonna let it bulk. So you're gonna repeat this step one more time after 15 minutes, and then you're gonna just let it bulk overnight. I've tried the fridge. It didn't work, I don't think. And I've tried the oven proof. Don't do that, that overproofs it. Unless you can actually watch it, I would not do that one. The on the counter seems to be the best method, to be honest. And it does need to bulk overnight. Okay, so again, I like to take my sourdough, and I don't know why this is not required. You do not have to do this at this stage, but I like to take it and smooth it out into a nice ball. And put it back in there so it's nice and smooth and it's turned back over again. So I'm going to show you guys. See? It's getting more and more round every time. It's just looking more and more put together. Okay, everyone, put on a sweater because it's so cool. We actually have an owl outside on a tree in our yard. I tried to get a couple pictures, so hopefully I can get some of those posted and all of that. So all I'm doing right now is I'm doing the last stretch. I think I misspoke in the first time. So I did two 15-minute stretches. So I did the 30-minute one, and then I put a timer for 15 minutes stretched, and then I put a timer for 15 minutes stretched, and then one more 15-minute timer, and now I'm doing it one more time, but this time, this is it. So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stretch it real quick, just make sure it gets kind of nice and tight. And then I'm going to form it into a ball. This time, if you haven't been shaping it and putting it into a nice ball, you want to do that now. You also want to make sure that you have a bowl that is really well floured. There's like these sourdough rising bowls that work, but I don't have one of those, so I just use a glass bowl. And until I actually can master some sourdough consistently, I'm not gonna waste the money on doing that, because it's just not worth the money to me to do that. So I actually did not flour my dish, so let me do that just real fast. And this time all I'm using is just all-purpose flour. There's no sense in doing bread flour for this, because this is just flouring. It is kind of hard to get flour to stick to a non-porous surface. So I just, like I said, I just flour it real well. Probably a little too much. I'm gonna shake some of that out. All right, just like that. Nice and floured. I put a little bit of water and kind of put the flour around. And then all I'm gonna do, get my hands nice and wet again, so I don't get flour on the dough right now, is I'm gonna fold it into a nice little ball, like so. And then pick it up and shape it like that. So it's nice and tight, a nice tight ball. If your dough is so runny and you cannot pick it up, you have done something wrong. I've tried to save that kind of dough. It turns into a puck. It's not bad. It's just you did something wrong and it's not gonna rise. So you can have dough, it just won't be beautiful. So I like to put the fold side down inside the bowl as best you can. And now all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cover that with saran wrap. Don't need this towel anymore. I'm gonna cover that with saran wrap and let it sit overnight, and it will double in size. It's pretty much gonna fill up this bowl all the way to here. A couple of people I watched when I was looking up recipes let their dough rise all the way to the cellophane or the plastic wrap. When I did that, it actually ended up not cooking correctly and being too goopy, like it had over risen. This, when I only let it rise to about here or so, it's perfect. So all I'm gonna do is the recommended just overnight on the counter. I've tried, like I said, I tried the fridge method. I tried the in the oven on bread proof, which I think went a little too fast. It still takes forever, but it definitely went a lot faster than just on the counter. So there. So I will pick up tomorrow, and I will see you guys tomorrow with the second half of making that. Okay, so had a little problem with my sourdough. It went over the bowl that I had it in last night. I woke up this morning to it bulging out the sides. I swear, sourdough has a mind of its own. I have yet to make one sourdough that's exactly the same. I've gotten so runny that I couldn't pick it up, and it literally just oozed through my hands. It was worse than slime. I have had one loaf that turned out perfect, and now I have this. This is super healthy. It was like in the glass bowl. I wish I would have taken a picture. It was all bubbles, like all the bubbles were there. Everything that it needed to have was there. It was gorgeous, just, it was way too big, and I wasn't ready to do the sourdough. I didn't think it was done rising, and it has risen quite a bit more, even being in here. So I'm gonna call it good at this point, and just go ahead and do the last stretch and fold. So I'm gonna stretch and fold it again. I know you just rose it, but you're gonna be gentle and just kind of stretch and fold it, and you're gonna shape it. This time you do have to shape it into a ball again, and that will be your final ball. So this time you're gonna take some flour and get flour all over yourself. Real quick, I stretched, all right, pulled it up off of the side, and then I just floured the sides, just so I can kind of have a better chance of getting up and under there. And this feels perfect. So we're gonna just kind of stretch and fold it over. You can pull this out at this time and do this on a floured surface, but I've made a mess of my kitchen already this morning, so I'm just leaving it in here and doing it in here, and that's perfectly fine too. Now this time you don't want to like stretch it to beyond where it's hard again. You're pretty much just stretching it into a ball. You're shaping it at this point. So I just pick it up, and then got my nice ball here, and I am happy with that. And now all I'm going to do is I'm going to just make sure this bowl is really floured. Oh, tons of recipes. If you just are how-tos, like actual how-tos where people successfully somehow manage to make their sourdough. I have followed 4 different people, and like I said, I think I just got lucky the one time because I did that same one another time and it did not turn out. So our dough is now shaped into a ball and is in here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to stick it in the fridge. So here are the things that can't change. Your recipe, and all recipes are pretty much the same. Like I said, 500 grams of flour, 350 grams of water, 50 grams of sourdough, or 50 to 100, sorry. And then like at least one stretch after 15 minutes, stretch and fold, maybe 2 at minimum, and then bulk overnight. And then in the morning, once it has risen good, I think it's like 14 hours. It can take anywhere from like 14 to 18 hours. It's really just dependent on what the sourdough looks like, and that's going to be something you have to know. Like I figured out if it raised all the way up to the cellophane, or at least I thought if it raised all the way up to the cellophane, that it wasn't going to be good. This time it was, you saw I could pick it up, I could handle it real well. It was super easy to handle. It felt really good, actually. This is probably the best filling I've ever had. So it just might be that I really fed my sourdough well and let it get to a really healthy state before I mixed my bread this time. But so your bulk overnight has to happen, or your 14 to 18 hours. I do recommend doing it, mixing at night, letting it bulk overnight, because otherwise you're going to be baking and doing this step at night at like 10, 11 o'clock, midnight. So depending on your schedule and how you do things, that is something to kind of consider. And a lot of people, a lot of tutorials that you watch will tell you that timing with sourdough is more important than anything else. And then the other thing is you have to at least let it sit in the fridge for an hour. I've seen minimum an hour, the most 24 hours. I don't know what it matters. I've left mine in there for up to 3 hours before, roughly. So it's just dependent on when you want to bake it. So all you're going to do is put your plastic wrap back on, put it in the fridge now, let it sit for at least 1 hour. And then when you're ready to bake, you're gonna put your Dutch oven, or I'm not exactly sure what else you can cook sourdough in. I happen to have a Dutch oven when I started making this, so I just used that because that's what people recommended. So a Dutch oven, you're gonna put that in the oven. So you're gonna grab your Dutch oven and you're gonna spray it with Pam. And then I saw a tip so that your bottom doesn't get completely black and burned. You're going to actually take cornmeal, just a little bit, and just put it on the very bottom. It does not stick to your sourdough, so if you don't like cornmeal, don't worry about it. It will not be there. You will not be able to taste it. It's literally just to allow air, the little bit, the tiniest amount of air to get up under the sourdough. This way your bottom doesn't get burnt. I also saw a tip to put a sheet of tin foil on the bottom rack of your oven, and you're putting your Dutch oven on top. This will also deflect the heat that's radiating just at the bottom and help it kind of circulate more so your bottom doesn't get burnt. I'm guessing that sourdough is tough to do, or is an easy one to burn the bottom of. I'm not exactly sure because I saw that tip and I've just kind of ran with that. So that's what I do every time personally. But you're gonna put, after you've at least Pammed it, if you don't have cornmeal, at least Pam it, then put your cornmeal in. You're gonna put it in your oven and preheat your oven to 450 with it in there. And then I have seen some people let it sit, they like to let it sit for an hour. I normally just let it preheat in there and maybe sit for an extra 5 minutes, and then I pull it out, put my sourdough in it as carefully as you can, because now you don't want to mess it up now. So this ball, you want to try to keep this ball as much as possible, put it in. I make whatever decorative slashes on it I want, and then you bake it. Now you're going to bake it at 450 for anywhere from 25 to 35 minutes. This is going to be dependent on how crunchy you like it. So the baking with the lid on will not make it become crunchy. So in total it's 50 minutes that you're baking sourdough. So in total 50 minutes at 400, or 450, sorry. So 50 minutes at 450. So depending on how crunchy you like it, what I found is the one sourdough that did turn out, when I did 35 minutes and 15 minutes, it was a little too crunchy for my family's liking. So I haven't made a successful one since then, but what I'd like to try to do is I'm gonna actually probably do 40 minutes and 10 minutes instead this time, to see if it turns out less crunchy. So just things to kind of keep. I'm gonna get this in the fridge for at least an hour. Depending on how my day goes, I'll figure it out from there. Here's the sourdough in the oven, and it turned out this time. If you listen carefully, you can actually hear it crackling. The sourdough needs to rest for at least 1 hour, because the crackling and popping that you're hearing is very important for the overall taste of the bread. So I hope you guys get to do and grow something you love. Have a great day.